And good morning, all. A simple little drawing from my sketchbook today. There's not going to be a whole lot of detail, and I've got a pretty left-heavy composition going on here. This is a 9x12 sheet of Arches 140-pound hot press paper, and I don't know if you noticed, but I got a brand new palette. It's giant. I think you can see it from space. Anyway, I like the layout, and here we go. So I'm going straight in with wet on dry, using a cobalt blue, and I was just kind of dragging it across the rough paper. I wanted to give the sky kind of a, seeing as I have so much open space there over on the right, I wanted to make the sky have a little bit of character. So there I am, I'm just dabbing out some clouds, and I'm going to go in and put a little bit of shadow underneath them. Not a whole lot of detail, not spending a whole lot of time on the sky, but I just wanted to make it not quite so lame. Yeah, so there goes the gray. I'm just putting that in underneath the clouds, because we do have that big open space over there to the right. By the way, the longer version of this, I'll have this over on Patreon, and also a template for this particular painting will be over on Patreon as well. So here we go. I'm going to get into the trees. While the camera is off, looks like I loaded up some cadmium yellow. Really heavy mixture. And I'm using that little mop brush and laying it on its side and just dabbing in some really wet paint. And of course, while it's super wet, I'm going in with, what have I got going there? I got some sap green going. I think I even put a little dab of orange in there. Yes, grabbing some orange, putting that in. Oh, there's my like and subscribe button while I'm painting the second tree. Thanks so much for everybody who's already subscribed. I appreciate it. And of course, I really appreciate the nice feedback and the great comments that I've been getting so far. It's awesome. Means a lot. Thanks so much. So all three trees, pretty well the same process, just a lot of wet paint and then just dropping color in there and putting even more color in. I think that's some yellow ochre and a bit of orange just to jazz them up a little bit. Now for the underside, it's a mix of, actually it's not a mix, I'm just using some undersea green for that. It's kind of a greeny blue thing. And while it was wet there, I just raced across and dropped in some salt. And I can already see it starting to work. So for this background, I was thinking of some trees in the background, far off in the distance. So again, absolutely no detail. I just wet the paper and dropped in a little combination of greens and grays, because I wanted to define a little bit of negative painting around that little barn in the background. And while it was still wet, I just dropped in a bit of green to have some trees that are a little bit closer. Now this little patch of ground here is actually out behind my main buildings. So I'm trying to make it light, like the light is hitting it, and I want to separate it from this foreground. Now the foreground's a whole bunch of colors going in there. I can't even begin to describe them. I got some yellow ochre, I got cadmium yellow, got some sap green, got a whole bunch of stuff going in. And while that dried, I went back over to that other patch here and just put some darker paint at the base of it there to separate it from the foreground. Now here's my rather odd chimney. We're going Davies gray and dropping in some Payne's gray at the base of it and a bit of burnt sienna. Now my addition, I wanted this little mudroom I've added off to the side there. I'm using some raw sienna, some burnt sienna, and a bit of Payne's gray. And while that's drying over there, I'm just going to paint the little water trough out front. Now I've got that side, the mudroom, but I've also got a fence right next to it. So I wanted to give the fence a little different color. So it's a little heavy on the burnt sienna. I'm mopping a bit of that out and then just putting in some Payne's gray at the base of it. And it's starting to settle in there now. Looks all right. So I'm trying to be efficient with my time here, and I'm painting the windows while the left side of the painting is drying. So all the windows are more or less just the sky color, so it's a bit of cobalt, a bit of ultramarine, and that really dark patch is an indication that that window is open. Trunks are pretty standard fare. I'm using a raw sienna with a bit of burnt sienna dropped in and some Payne's Gray. A little darker up underneath the foliage there because it's in shadow. Yeah, I'm being super efficient here, moving left to right. Now, often what happens with me when I paint, I lose track of what I'm working on, and when I lose the definition, I jump out and I grab my my pen there. That's the Lamy Extra Fine, of course, with waterproof ink. The Trementis Document ink is what I'm using. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is just kind of detail out the left side. See how my painting's going to look? And that's just the way I'm wired. I like to see how things are going to be rather than work my way all the way through and then ink all at once. I get tired of inking all at once. So do a little bit on the left here, and I'm starting to like what it's, see, I could keep inking this entire thing, but walk away, Gary, walk away. Let the pen down. Okay, so we got the paint out. Going to the building at the back right, which is a barn. I just wanted to have a like kind of a faded red look, and then drop in a bit of shadow to show that it's on a bit of a turn. Seeing as I have my red out, I've decided I'm going to go with a red roof here on this immediate building in the foreground. It's kind of a barn, outbuilding sort of thing. It was too red, so I dropped in some cadmium yellow just to spice it up at the top, and then some burnt sienna at the base. A little bit of that burnt sienna didn't really take to it, but I think I'll just leave it as is. As I mentioned, I wasn't going to go too heavy on the inking on this one as far as details, so I won't be inking any tiles or shingles on that roof. Now this little outbuilding, barn, whatever you want to call it in the back, I'm going to go with a... that's just straight up sap green, and I'll be dropping some yellows into that as well. Yeah, a bit of cadmium yellow on the top, let that spread out. And now I'm going back into, I'm getting a little fancy here. There's a little window at the back of that building, and I'm trying to darken the areas of that barn further away from the window. Yeah, it kind of worked, but let's pretend it worked. And now while everything is drying, I'm going to get in with the ink again. Now these buildings, I know for sure I'm keeping the house white because I want to work on shadows in this painting. So I'm going in with straight up raw sienna and dropped in some burnt sienna, and then on those edges that are being hit by the light, I'm just mopped out a bit there to lighten them up a bit. Now I'm pretending the foreground's in a bit of shade from some other trees, so I'm just laying in some ultramarine because it was way too light for me. Undersea green. And I'm just making that area a little more interesting by having a little more dark in the foreground. And as you can see, it dried quite a bit lighter. So my shadows, ultramarine, Payne's Gray. And I've decided that my light is going to be coming from the upper right. So it's going to be throwing the shadows there over to the left. So all the shadows are going to be cast to the left. And I left the building white because I wanted to have some fun with the shadows on that right building there. So it's nice when the building is white and you get a nice bluey purple shadow going. It looks kind of cool. And of course the house is throwing shadow on the fence. So I put a little 45-degree angle shadow on that. And now we're down to some finishing touches here. Did the foreground fairly, added a little more paint in the foreground and a little bit of paint on that back stretch there to separate it from the foreground. We'll ink out these details. A few little dots and dashes. I always like this, defining the painting at the end, and sometimes I go a little bit too far. I think I added a few too many strokes on those immediate buildings. Touch up the window over there because it's in more shadow, so I just darkened up the glass a bit. Little shadows on the window frame and on the sill. And that just about does it. Just putting a little bit of color on the rocks. Terribly simple painting. Oh, by the way, if you want this one or anything like it, you can find me over at my Etsy shop. Yeah, foreground. There we go. Even darker. There we go. Okay, let's get this signed. Get the tape off it and see what it looks like. Hey, thanks so much for watching. And we'll see you again soon.